on the blockchain now. We minted on the blockchain now. You clowns still in the clouds. You clowns is still in the clouds. We on the blockchain now. We on the blockchain now. Hey, you clowns still in the clouds. Minted, just like an NFT.
Hello and welcome to Blockchain and Lucia's podcast. We haven't figured out a name for it yet, but I'm sure it will come along at some point. I am here today with one of the team members, Jamil Bouske. Welcome to the studio, Jamil.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
And of course, I am Anarcisse Alexander. We are two members of the team, Blockchain and Lucia. Blockchain and Lucia, right now, we're on a mission to spread blockchain education to as many people as we can. So, what is our topic for today? We are gonna basically start from the beginning and kind of give you a brief definition or like explanation of what blockchain is, go into a brief history of Bitcoin, and then we're gonna talk about where we kind of are right now in the whole world of Web3, the metaverse, the blockchain industry, and where we're going. Okay, so maybe we can do some formal introductions to start. So I'll go first. My name is Anarcisse Alexander. Well, we're both from the island of St. Lucia, so I'll leave out the obvious information. But my interest in cryptocurrency and blockchain pretty much sparked out of my interest for finance. I've been interested in finance and investing for ever since I could remember. Since I was in my teens, I've been exploring ways to invest online and make money, looking into stocks and so on. And Jamil actually introduced me to cryptocurrency way back when we were in school. I never really took action on it at that time, but from about 2019, I have been active in the markets when it comes to cryptocurrency. Later on, I started learning more about blockchain technology and what it could offer the world. And here I am today on this podcast, about to speak to you about some of that.
All right, yeah. So my name is Jamil Bouske. I've known Naz for a very long time. We went to secondary school together, and whilst there, I did introduce him to blockchain, well, Bitcoin. At the time, my interest in blockchain dates back, just around that time, maybe around 2013, 14. I remember, reading up on Bitcoin on the internet. A lot of people talking about it in those blogs like Engadget, and it was making a lot of noise around that time. People were interested in how you could electronically trade some form of tender over the internet, and there was a lot of claim that it was safer than sending traditional money. So I remember around that time I went to Valma, which was a place in our it's like a store that kind of sells office stuff, among other things, but they sold like office stuff, things like Bristol boards and markers and stuff like that. I remember going there, buying some Bristol boards, some markers, coming home and making some charts, making a presentation for my mother. And my goal was to convince her that this thing called Bitcoin would be like big in the future. I made charts, I made graphics and stuff like that.
Wow.
And I said, you know what, Mom, this thing will be big one day. I told her about, how safe it is or how they claim it's safe and all that. I didn't have like a deep understanding of it, but I was just so interested in it, and I just felt like it would be something big, just based on my research at that time, however amateur it was back then. I guess she was interested in my effort. She was really impressed with it, but I guess not enough to listen
Actually,
to what
pull the trigger.
listen to a 13-year-old and risk a financial future on it. But ever since I've been really interested in Bitcoin.
Nice.
And it all led up to my current position. Right now I'm a software developer for a company that works on blockchain solutions for companies as a consultancy, if you may. That's a brief introduction, I guess, on me.
Nice. It's funny because I would have never even thought to go and do something like make charts to try and convince my parents, because I just knew at that time they would have just been like, hell no.
I mean, I thought about that, but then I
Yeah.
said, you know what, let me
Just
just,
give it a try.
Yeah,
I,
you
I
know.
mean, honestly, that's a better approach than the one I took. But I mean, at the time, I guess I just knew from trying to convince them about other things how they, you kind of get to learn how people react to things at a
yeah.
certain point. But that's actually a real baller move. That's kind of what I'm trying to do right now, and it's easier to do today because obviously they can see the track record. Like, okay, Bitcoin was this price and now it's
Right.
this price. And
Yeah.
now my mom is actually interested in getting into it, so I'm gonna get her set up with. I want to try and get her into a cold wallet first, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. So let us dive into our topics here. So the first thing, basically, what is blockchain? Of course, you're the developer here amongst between the two of us. I'm on my way, but I'm just a baby in it. So how about you start us off?
Yeah.
What is blockchain?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try not to get too technical. I feel like blockchain is not something that you need, I don't know, like a huge cranium to understand. Um, so way back in forever ago, maybe around, like I like to say like maybe 2008, 2009, there was an anonymous developer called Satoshi Nakamoto, and by anonymous I mean up till this day nobody actually knows who created Bitcoin. But this anonymous developer wanted to create a ledger, which is something that records transactions, something that you can use to reference and check the balances for certain individuals. He wanted to create a ledger that proves the integrity of account balances and also ensures that nobody can double spend. Now,
Right.
in the space of electronic monetary transactions, that latter part is really important because you don't want to have any kind of glitch where somebody has X amount of dollars, they spend Y amount of dollars from that X amount, and they still can't spend Y amount, even though it shouldn't be possible. It's a way to ensure that that catastrophic side effect doesn't happen.
So in other words, I cannot have $20 in my account and end up spending 40 by accident.
Exactly, or if you have that $20 in your account, you can't spend, let's say $11 and spend $11 again.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
So what he did is that he created something called Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. I guess you could say maybe it's the first mainstream blockchain, and what Bitcoin really is. I feel like people understand Bitcoin as those how much Bitcoin you have in your wallet. Like
Right.
how much tokens. How much tender do you have in your electronic wallet or whatever. But Bitcoin is kind of like a network, really.
Right.
Persons basically dedicate their resources, their computer's central processing unit, their GPU, their storage as well, to ensure that this ledger that Satoshi Nakamoto wanted to make abides by those two principles, of ensuring that account balances hold integrity, and that he can ensure that nobody double spends. Now, he
Oh,
can,
and the part about the network you mentioned earlier is really important too, because that's something you hear spoken about a lot, which is the network effects. Because in essence, what makes our fiat currency like so viable is just because we all decided that yes, it has value, we will accept it. Institutions decide that they will accept it. The governments decide that they will accept it. So in essence, it has a very strong network effect. And essentially, without that network effect, it would be useless. And the same applies to cryptocurrencies out there. If there's no one on the Bitcoin network, then it really has no value.
absolutely, and that's exactly what I was getting towards. So in this network, let me try and put it in a kind of micro level at first. So imagine that this network has a person called Alice and a person called Bob, and at least one miner, and I'll get to what a miner is in a second. So imagine a scenario where Alice wants to send Bob a certain amount of legal, well, not really legal tender, but some form of tender. And I guess in this case it's Bitcoin. Um, so what happens in that transaction in the Bitcoin network is that transaction is recorded and hashed using a hashing algorithm. And what that is in cryptography is a algorithm that kind of makes something that makes sense into something that doesn't make sense. You know, it's designed to make somebody who's not involved in this transaction to not understand what's going on. And I guess in the space of cybersecurity, that's absolutely important. You want to give I guess fourth parties, people who have no business knowing what that transaction is,
Yeah.
not knowing exactly what's happening.
So for those, if you want another way to think about this, it's almost like your privacy screen on your phone. Like those films you can put, and then if someone looks from the side, they cannot really see the information
Exactly.
on your screen.
Yeah.
It's only from your screen to your eyes.
Right.
That's where the information goes in.
Yeah, that's a good analogy actually. So that happens on like between you and Bob, Alice and Bob, and what happens is that hash that's created is used is kind of put together in a block. You know, it's kind of like a block of other hashes, and this block of hashes has something called a header, which is another hash that's generated with the same algorithm. And at that point, at least, well, the other miners in the network um, see those transactions. They see a block needs created. They see that a bunch of people want to post their transactions and verify those transactions on the network. So those miners, which can be someone's computer, I guess for this example, let's keep it simple and say, someone's computer. Um, they see this hash and they see a hash as a problem that they want to solve. There's a directive for each computer to solve that hash, so to speak. Um, and what happens is that each miner looks to find a solution. And the thing about it is that it's not like how a person can do mathematics and use common factors or
Right.
or other kinds of techniques to solve a problem, make a complex problem less complicated. There's only one way to solve those problems, and that's through trial and error, over and over again. And
Because there could be like millions and billions of possible solutions, right?
exactly, and each hash that these miners get is unique. So each problem, I guess, in turn is unique. So maybe you can see a previous solution, and maybe you're doing some math exam and you're like, okay, so this is I remember the solution for that other exam I did in class, so let me try and apply it here. No, that doesn't apply. And this once one miner solves that problem or finds that solution, other miners on the network is able to check to see if that solution is correct. And that's kind of emphasizes one point of cryptography where it's easy to go one way.
Yeah.
And well, it's easy to check a solution or check a hash to see if it's correct, but it's another thing to actually solve that hash or create that hash.
Right.
So it's relatively easy for other miners to see that solution and say, okay, yeah, it's correct.
Yeah.
And once a reasonable amount of miners confirm that the solution is correct,
Yeah.
then that's basically the transaction being posted. Like, that's that step done. At that point, Alice can say that I sent Bob X amounts of Bitcoin or whatever token or tender, and Bob can say, yes, I received that amount from Alice, and any person observing the network can see that transaction actually did happen, and Alice has X amount, and Bob has X amount. So,
And that whole process you described there is actually why it can the times that a transaction takes to be completed can vary.
Exactly.
It's because how much information is trying to get through the network at one time, and there's only so many miners that can solve the hash and then validate that the hash is correct. So
Right.
if you have a big backup of information, then it can slow down. But if there's not much trying to get through at that time, then it can actually be really, really fast.
Exactly. And I guess to take home that idea of blockchain, just before I do that and say why exactly it's called blockchain, So the thing about that, and you mentioned the participation of multiple miners a while ago there. The thing about that whole process is that um, it's it's very hard to actually predict who the miner will be,
Right.
or who will solve that problem, because it's each problem that these miners have to solve is unique. It takes X amount of time, and um, it maybe depends on how early you can start solving the problem, but it's really a brute force method. It's who's most powerful, who's the hardest working, and that's, to me, shows why the name miner is very, very apt, because it's all about hard work. There's no shortcuts in traditional mining.
Yeah.
So once that's done, the block is created, and the miner that solves the problem gets rewarded a certain amount of Bitcoin. I remember back in the day it was like 25, but all Bitcoin has been generated, so I'm not sure if it's fixed at 25 now. But
Are all Bitcoin generated already?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's there's no Bitcoin being created anymore.
Okay.
But
I
yeah.
thought it was supposed to reach its max by like 2024 or something.
You might be right. I remember a while back that it was pretty close.
Let me confirm that.
Yeah, yeah, please do. But yeah, once that's done and the block is created, that hash, that header of that block that was created, and you can consider that header in that block as like a handle to a box. The box has information in it. You can consider that header of that block a handle. Or remember when you could actually have your phone tied around your neck with those lanyards, and your phone would have like a hole in it, like a loop where you could attach that lanyard to.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can consider the head of the block that, because what happens is that head of the block is part of the block for the next block being created. That's how that previous block is attached to that next block. And once that block is created, the same process happens at the end of it. The header of that new block gets attached to the block of the next one, and that continues. And that's
it's almost like the blocks are having kids, because it's like the kids carry on some of the genetics, but at the end of the day, they're different people overall.
With the constraint that each kid can only have one kid.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely important in the concept of blockchain. But that is why they call it blockchain, because it's literally a chain of blocks that are chained together.
Yeah, and you cannot change one link in that chain without changing all the rest before it.
Exactly. So if Alice at some point says, "Oh crap, I sent Bob some money I didn't want to. I'm going to be broke for next week." Well, I mean, I'm sorry to say, Alice, but you can't actually change that transaction without Bob's permission. Alice cannot change that transaction at all. I mean, by the time she attempts to do so through brute force, most likely another block is created.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it becomes difficult, because now Alice would have to change that current block and the previous block.
Yeah.
And by the time she maybe gets close to changing that new block, a new block has been created already, and that really takes home the security of blockchain. And at this point, I mean, Bitcoin has been there since 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a lot of blocks to
go and undo. And for those of you listening who don't like, maybe you don't get the full significance of this, just compare it to our current financial system, where somebody can go make a transaction with a credit card, and if they decide to, and people do this literally every day, there's like, okay, they're gonna make a purchase with a credit card, and then they're going to go and initiate something called a chargeback. So they can just go, and then the bank will issue them all their money back, and they can essentially steal whatever it is that they are supposedly paid for earlier.
Exactly.
But that's not possible on the blockchain, just based on everything what Jamil just described. But here's I have an article here pulled up on Investopedia about the cap of Bitcoin, just because we mentioned it earlier. But based on what I read so far, it doesn't look like the cap has been reached just yet.
Really?
But we're nearing it, I think. The total number of Bitcoin issued is not expected to reach 21 million. That's because the Bitcoin network uses bitches, blah, blah, blah. They set the date. As of January 2022, 18.9 million bitcoins have already been issued, with about 2.1 million bitcoins still to be released.
Wow, okay. That's incredible. Actually.
Yeah.
I actually thought it already reached that cap.
Yeah. So it looks like we have a bit of time before the full Bitcoin supply is in circulation. But once it does hit that cap, that's it. There will be no more Bitcoin. And that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is so valuable, which is actually a good segue into our next topic, which is a brief history specifically of Bitcoin. Now you went into a lot of the technical workings of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin actually has a few predecessors, right? So I've been digesting the book lately, Mastering Blockchain. I forget the authors, but in there they talk about a couple of the predecessors. I remember two of them, which is Hashcoin and eGold, and there was maybe one or two more. And what Bitcoin did, or what the creators of Bitcoin did, was they took some of the most successful trades from all those previous coins, and they put it into one coin, and then added extra features on top of that, because all of the previous those predecessors to Bitcoin, they did have some merit and worked for some amount of time, but ultimately all of them got tumbled by one thing or the other. Bitcoin was the only one that managed to survive the test of time until now, right? So, like you mentioned, the creators or creator, because some people think Satoshi is a group.
Yeah.
Some people think he's an individual.
Yeah.
Might be a she, we don't know. There was actually a guy whose original name was Satoshi Nakamoto, a Japanese guy who, actually his work was, everything about him was in line with being the real Satoshi,
right? Yeah.
but he ended up denying that he was Satoshi. Now, I don't know. Is that the real Satoshi Nakamoto? Is it not? We have no idea. But the point is, the technology this guy left in that white paper, well, created actually and put out there to be improved upon, is amazing. What else can we say about the history of Bitcoin? Bitcoin has been through a lot, right? Like, from the time when you told me about it, you mentioned that was back in like 2014, 2015. The other day you were telling me it was below, you were telling me that it was a certain price, and I was like, nah, I think it was around 300, but I went to check the charts today, and I think you might have been right, because in 2014, Bitcoin was already Bitcoin was just around $300, but I think you told me about that a year or two before 2014, maybe 2013 or 2012. So it may have actually been under $200.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy because neither of us went and got any Bitcoin.
I mean, if I could, I would.
Yeah, me too. I remember we were looking a lot into mining it.
Yeah.
With our computers at the time, which is, I actually remember getting as far as downloading the Bitcoin client and getting to about maybe 30 or 40% of catching up to the network, but I never got fully synced with the network. That
is memories, you know.
Yeah.
Because I remember also doing that with my old Lenovo laptop, and oh man, you know, I used to just leave my computer there, like
overnight by the modem.
Like, it took so long, bro.
So long, bro. It never finished for me, so I just kind of gave up, you know.
Yeah.
A little teenager doesn't have that much resolve.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I need my laptop for work too.
You check what I'm saying? Yeah. But sorry, you were about to say something?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm pretty sure I mined some Bitcoin on my old laptop.
Damn.
But the thing is, like I was like always a guy I like to play in computers.
Right.
So at some point I use a software called T-Ban, and I guess some IT heads out there might be wondering I probably already know what's gonna happen next. So I wiped my laptop hard drive in a manner that it cannot be restored. So that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you actually, all this time I was like, damn, I could have bought, I didn't buy. But you actually managed to mine some and lost it in a hard drive wipe.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, but you know, I just never, and I try not to make it bum me out.
Because,
you know, shit happens, and I didn't really, you know, think that it gets so crazy.
Yeah, you live, you learn, and you can't look to the past and be like, oh, I woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Exactly.
Just keep moving on. I mean, right now today you literally a blockchain developer, so can't complain, right?
Oh no.
Bitcoin has, speaking of the history of Bitcoin, it has gone through quite a lot of price swings over the years. I have a little list here. So like I mentioned, back in 2014, we were under or around $300, right?
Right.
At that time, there were already people out there saying, oh, y'all are going to get scammed. Y'all are going to lose all your money. Bitcoin is going to disappear. It's garbage. It's a toy. It's weird internet money, all kind of thing like that. They were saying it's finished. And then, that was 2014. By 2017, Bitcoin had pulled all-time highs of $4,700. That's up from $300 in 2014. That's already incredible, right? And at that time, again, people were saying, oh, Bitcoin is finished. It's going to go down from here. It cannot get any higher. It's going to crash. Then, that same year, so that was August 2017, it hit 4,700. That same year, December 2017, that's when it set the all-time highs of $20,000. That happened in 1 year. From $4,700 to $20,000 all-time highs. And what did people say again? Bitcoin is finished.
It's a scam.
It cannot go any higher. It's a scam. It's a bubble. It's going to blow up.
Yeah.
But then, what happened in 2018? A year later, in December of 2018, Bitcoin was back to $3,000. So those critics at that time, they were, jumping for joy because they were right. Some people made a lot of money shorting Bitcoin. People laughing in your face. But then there were those who still believed in the because despite the price in US dollars, Bitcoin, like as we said earlier, is powerful because of the network it has, and the network of people believes in the technology, believes in what it can give us, financial sovereignty, independence from the state, all this kind of this long list of benefits that if you want to learn more about, you can go to blockchainstlucia.com and read a bit more about that. But they actually had a moment there, and then what happened in June of 2019? So December of 2018, $3,000, right? June 2019, 14,000. So kind of back up there, close to its all-time highs. But in March of 2020, back to 4,000. So anybody who's been holding Bitcoin all the time has been going through a very, very wild ride.
Yeah, like an emotional roller coaster, huh?
Exactly. Very wild ride, okay? And that's when Bitcoin did one of the craziest things. April of 2020, so March 2020, it was 4,000. April 2021, it actually peaked all-time highs of $65,000. Crazy, crazy, crazy. People just keep saying the same thing. Every stage of the game, every price Bitcoin was, when you made new all-time highs, people either thought they were too late, it was still a scam. The people who believed in it, they were shouting from the rooftops.
Right.
That same year in November, Bitcoin did 69,000 all-time highs. And then that brings us to today, where we sit at right now, which is a bit below our all-time highs, or actually quite a large percentage in terms of risk assets, 41,000 US dollars. Now, I have a binary question for you.
Right.
What do we see first, 60K or 30K?
Oh, I mean, I'm not trying to give financial advice.
No, nothing you hear on this podcast is financial advice. This is just our opinions, strictly. Make sure you consult a financial professional before you make any decisions.
Yeah. So, I mean, when the year starts, traditionally, I think you see a lot of movement.
Right.
I've been hearing a lot of talk about alt season, and usually when it's alt season, Bitcoin creeps up and starts to go on its own little rally, So I mean, I can't say. I mean, sometimes you make predictions and it's hard to actually be accurate. But I would say that I think right now you would see some movement, some major movement.
Yeah.
Which side, I'm not sure. I think it can go either way because, I mean, I wouldn't say Bitcoin is overbought, but I would say that that it's been on a rally for quite a long time. And every once in a while you get little moments where it kind of consolidates before going back up. So yeah, I guess that's my non-answer.
I like that. Well, as for me, I go put it out there. We already give our disclaimer. I go put it out there and say, I believe just because I've been keeping my ear to the street, right? I'm someone who spends a lot of time digesting financial reports. I watch a lot of interviews. I look at like there's this channel I recommend to everybody now, which is Real Vision, because they just make high quality content. They interview some of the top experts in the field, analysts, investors, CEOs of hedge funds, CEOs of Bitcoin, of blockchain exchanges or crypto exchanges. I mean, even people from traditional finance who don't even care about cryptocurrencies. Well, I wouldn't say don't care, but like less involved. So they interview them, and the sentiment that I'm getting is that we have a lot of upside, and that there's a lot of factors at play that would allow Bitcoin to achieve a $60,000 price as opposed to a $30,000 price. Especially with institutions not even being able to enter the market yet, and with there's a timeline this year of events that's supposed to allow or like start opening up the door to institutions to come in, such as the ETF that we have lined up, the Bitcoin ETF that we have in negotiation, I suppose is the right word. So I believe that this year, if we can get some progress in those areas in the regulatory space, I believe we can see that Bitcoin returning to 60K or even making all-time highs. Will we get the $100,000 price that so many people have been raving about? I don't know.
That's a question.
I don't know.
That's
but
the big question.
I'll be here to see. But even though I'm very bullish on Bitcoin still, I remember I was talking to you the other day about a possible trade from Bitcoin to Ethereum that I was looking at. I pulled up my chart 2 days ago. I saw it was at about, so that's Ethereum against Bitcoin. If anybody wants to check out that chart, I'll probably leave it somewhere in the show notes. But the price level was at 0.075329 area. And then I was like, it looked like to me that it could pull back some more. So I actually waited until it had a bounce off the 0.073333 area, and I exchanged my Bitcoin for Ethereum somewhere about then, and it's actually gone up a little bit since then. So I did end up actually taking that trade, just so you know.
It looks solid, huh?
Yeah, but that being said, I am still very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm still holding Bitcoin. I just wasn't holding any Ethereum, so I was looking for a good place to get some.
Absolutely.
You know.
I guess to those who might be real crypto novices out there, I would like to talk about another side of Bitcoin's history. So, we went over the kind of monetary journey, as you would, of Bitcoin.
Right.
But to me, as probably a blockchain geek, so to speak, looking at some of the news that Bitcoin has gone through over the years, I mean, it's been quite an extraordinary journey.
Definitely.
I mean, a lot of people see those huge drops in Bitcoin. Every once in a while, going from 1,000 to 300, or go from 10,000 to 3,000 or so. And they're thinking, wow, I mean, this thing must be like a Ponzi scheme or some kind of rug pull, right? But I mean, there's a lot of story behind it, man. And sometimes you go to those charts, you look at it, and you're like, can you remember 2013? Can you remember 2016 or something like that? And just remember the history around that time. So one of the earliest stories of Bitcoin I heard, this was kind of like Bitcoin 101 around that time, when I found out about it. There was this guy called, I think his name was Laszlo Heincheks or something like that. He wanted to buy a couple Papa John's pizzas with Bitcoin.
I remember this.
So, I mean, at that time, to me, there wasn't any real monetary utility for Bitcoin. There was no utility for Bitcoin. By that I mean you couldn't really go to the store and buy something in Bitcoin. But this guy is this crazy dude. He bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. Can you imagine?
Bro,
can you imagine how this guy must be feeling now?
How much would 10,000? Let me pull out my Bitcoin calculator.
I mean, you would be a millionaire.
Yeah, definitely.
You would be a multi-millionaire at that point.
That's even understating it.
But to me, that was just I can see that story as kind of being like the faith in Bitcoin, because it's really come a long way. I mean, you could buy a lot of things with Bitcoin right now, but I mean, one of the things that people used to buy Bitcoin was drugs, and that's a lot. I know a lot of people when they talk about blockchain, when they talk about Bitcoin, they sometimes have this argument that, if you hold Bitcoin, you probably engage in drug trafficking. Um, that's absolutely not the case. I mean, Satoshi Nakamoto didn't make Bitcoin for that sort of thing. I mean, the same way money wasn't created for
Yeah.
the trading
Exactly.
of drugs
It's a tool.
or other forms of, I guess, things that people find immoral or illegal.
Yeah.
But there was something called Silk Road. I remember that time.
Oh,
when there was,
just as a side note, 10,000 Bitcoin today would be 416 million
uh,
US dollars. So that guy bought the most expensive pizzas in the world.
absolutely. I mean, can you imagine? I wonder who owns that Bitcoin. That person probably sold in increments over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the Silk Road. I mean, I remember the first iteration of Silk Road, and I think they had like maybe two or three. After that one, it was huge. I mean, it was making news, and people were like, "Ha, look at this shit! It's happening, and the authorities can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
The police couldn't do anything about it because Bitcoin is quote unquote anonymous."
For those listening, Silk Road was actually a web marketplace where people would exchange drugs and all kind of
Yeah.
nefarious items for
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, I guess different from the traditional Silk Road. I think was around the Middle East.
Yeah, it was another drug trafficking path, right?
Yeah, it could be. I think it was also engaging in legitimate trades
Oh,
of
okay,
stuff.
okay.
I mean, Silk Road has some legal stuff, I guess, as well. But
Yeah.
I mean, it had a lot of illegal stuff, and
Yeah.
it got pretty crazy. A lot of people got went to jail because people, buying and selling their stuff with Bitcoin, and eventually, somebody needs to pay the bills. And I guess at the time for a person selling those drugs, especially, or selling whatever nefarious items, they would sell their Bitcoin on the exchange, on a centralized exchange that had their ID, their address,
Like,
their
wow.
phone number, and all that. So I mean, when you get to that point, you sell Bitcoin, and people are like, "How is this guy making so much money?
Yeah.
What is this guy doing?" I mean, the feds, especially in America, the feds will take notice, and they did their investigation, they did digging, and they caught some names. I mean, it was crazy, and eventually Silk Road had to be dismantled.
Yeah.
That is the first version, and there were some others that had the same fate eventually. And then there was something called Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
And Mt. Gox, I mean, Mt. Gox was around that time, 2013, 14. That was the only way you could really buy Bitcoin. I think that was like one of the few options for me personally to buy Bitcoin. But I just went against it just because I think there was some barriers to entry that I wasn't very fond of at the time. I don't know. But I mean, that was another scandal that made news. And
Yeah.
a lot of people went to jail because, they had a lot of well, there was one particular case, I think, they might have gotten hacked, and they got into a lot of trouble for it. I mean, the creators of Mt. Gox went to jail because they were indicted, and
Yeah, bro, that's crazy. It's funny because the creators of Mt. Gox, they didn't even have anything to do with all the they weren't really trying to do something bad, you know?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They were providing a service, and they thought they were doing the right thing. But I
Exactly.
mean, when people losing millions of dollars,
Yeah.
I mean, they has to have somebody taking account for all of
Yeah,
that.
man.
It's
Crazy.
I,
And the understanding I have, because I was listening to a talk about them just like recently, and he was saying like what happened to them was like it basically just grew bigger than they imagined. Like imagine carrying a bowling ball and you're just strolling on the road, and all of a sudden your bowling ball just inflates to like 100 times its size
yeah.
and squishes you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that was kind of what it was. I mean, the guys that made Mt. Gox, they were like nerds. They were just guys that wanted to make something cool. I mean, I remember watching a documentary the other day about it, and yeah, those guys were just like, they weren't businessmen. They weren't really suits.
Right.
They were nerds that wanted.
Yeah.
You know,
Because they originally they were trading assets from, what was it, Magic the Gathering or World of Warcraft? Or
Right,
World of
exactly,
Warcraft, yeah.
exactly.
They were just trading game assets.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned these things because I mean that's kind of some of the fallbacks that Bitcoin had over the years. But I mean, a lot of people see those things and they're like, okay, so it's gonna happen again. Okay, so because of these incidents, Bitcoin is not safe. But I mean, to me, that's stuff that happens in legal tender as well. I mean, there's so many cases of people making scripts or bots that penny pinch banks,
Right.
taking cents at a time and making hundreds of thousands of dollars after a few months.
Yeah.
And let's not talk about the scam market.
So many scams.
I mean, it's crazy. I think a lot of people don't understand how easy it is to get scammed or to get their
Yep.
bank account compromised
Yep.
if they just do a small wrong step on the internet.
Yep. Even in the physical world, you have these attachments you can add to ATM machines that when you go to use the ATM, boom, it just swipes all your information and uploads it to a server where the guys can access it and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And there's actually whole marketplaces for this where they sell people's card information in bulk. But most people don't think about it and they don't realize how actually fragile their security is in the current financial system. So when they see certain events being glorified in the news, blown up in the news, then they tend to think, oh, maybe crypto is not safe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been demonized a bit, but I mean, despite that, I mean, you have to tip your hat to a lot of people who kept the faith in stuff like Bitcoin and I'll talk about some other cryptocurrencies in a sec, but it could very well have gone the path of stuff like I think you mentioned Bitgold.
Yeah.
And
E-gold.
E-gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but I mean, a lot of people stuck with it. They understood that Bitcoin isn't really the problem, but it's more of a human error.
Yeah, man.
So around that time, there was also something called Litecoin, which was kind of like a fairer Bitcoin because I remember at a certain time you really couldn't mine Bitcoin with your CPU.
Right.
You had to have like GPUs, like warehouses of GPUs, and Litecoin was created kind of like a twin of Bitcoin that could have you could participate in the network in a more fairer manner. In fact, you can't really make a lot of profit if you use GPU miners or SIC miners, which are kind of machines created specifically for mining Bitcoin. And that was pretty big because it was kind of like the people's cryptocurrency again.
Right.
And then there was Ethereum, and Ethereum was in fact, in my opinion, Ethereum is probably one of the biggest developments in blockchain technology ever since Bitcoin came out.
Yeah, bro, I agree.
Because this guy called Vitalik Buterin, who was someone who was interested in blockchain. In fact, he had a magazine dedicated to Bitcoin and blockchain. He tried to propose a Bitcoin where you could do more than just transfer money, but you could also create applications on the blockchain.
Right.
Decentralized applications where you could do much more than just send money from Alice to Bob.
And then in that way, instead of just being like a really huge global network, it could actually be like a really huge global supercomputer.
Absolutely. And yeah, supercomputer is the right nomenclature because Ethereum right now is a monster, and you could create a lot of complex, really brilliant applications on the blockchain, some of which that you can't really replicate on a simple server.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a powerful thing, how the contributions of the world can create something that cannot be replicated or difficult to replicate in more traditional manners. Hopefully we can get on that.
Now that you mention DApps or decentralized apps, which is one of the use cases of Ethereum, that's a good kind of transition into kind of where we are right now in Web3, the whole metaverse blockchain industry. Let's start that section out by talking about some of the use cases for Bitcoin, because we've been talking a lot about Bitcoin and some of its use cases, but let's take the opposite side now, because there are people out there that are saying that, okay, because Bitcoin isn't as conducive for building apps on top of, then the use cases of Bitcoin are limited to, say, just like a store of value. Like, digital gold is what people tend to want to call Bitcoin. And the argument is being made that, Ethereum right now has tons more use cases, because you can deploy these decentralized apps run by something called smart contracts onto the Ethereum blockchain, and right now on Web3, ETH is money. You can buy things with ETH all over Web3. You can pay for services and buy things with Bitcoin, but when you compare it to ETH, there's so many more that you can do. So how do you see, like, okay, this is where we are now. How do you see that evolving? Do you think that there will be more use cases developed for Bitcoin? Maybe a way to, because there's already people starting to experiment with layer twos, like the Lightning Network on Bitcoin. Um, what do you see as kind of like the path?
Well, oh, the path. I mean, that's a tough question. I feel like I'm on an exam.
No, I mean, it's just your opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no wrong or right answers.
Yeah, I
But
get it.
I mean, just you are insider. You work you work in development.
Right.
So
I mean, it's really an exciting space, and I think that just this morning I was thinking about it a little bit. I can see it going in a place where for certain applications or for certain services that people want to provide to users, they don't have to constrain themselves with centralized servers. Stuff like the big players like AWS and Microsoft Azure, where you're depending on those services for keeping your website up, keeping your service up, your form of revenue. Stream comes because you're dependent on them, and I just feel like there can be a lot of really cool applications, a lot of cool solutions for people that are hosted purely on a blockchain in a decentralized server, if you may.
your thing is more that you more look at it on a like a wider scale of like blockchain technology as a whole, as opposed to say Bitcoin or just Ethereum or
Yeah, because I feel like right now those blockchain solutions are kind of like a layer. I mean, if you want to consider a website like, I don't know, maybe Google or Amazon, like a lasagna, like think of it as a lasagna. The whole lasagna dish is Amazon.
right.
As an example.
Right, and you're saying like those blockchains could be a layer in that lasagna.
Exactly. It's a part of the whole. It's necessary to make it what it is. But I feel like blockchain in the future, I can absolutely see this happening. Where blockchain in the future is the lasagna, it is the thing.
Right.
It's everything. It's every layer can be can be a part of the blockchain or a part of a blockchain solution.
Right.
Server side database. Database is is more or less already blockchain. Blockchain is like a database for data. You want to know how much Alice and Bob has, blockchain. You want to know how much tokens Alice or Bob is due based on their participation in the network, blockchain. If you want to check the state of something, and that's a very broad thing. I don't want to get too technical, but if you want to check the state of something, you don't need to have a database on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or whatever. Nothing centralized. You can check it on the blockchain, and that's one thing. But what if your application can be hosted on a blockchain in a decentralized manner, where the data of persons, where the resources needed to process data is not concentrated to a server,
Right.
but it's distributed and distributed in a safe manner so as not to compromise any part of the whole. And it's still just as how you interact with something like, I don't know, Gmail or Amazon,
Yeah.
or anything like that. To me, that's a feature of blockchain, and I feel like we're already starting that process of getting there, which is
Definitely.
amazing.
I definitely agree with you, man. That's kind of the stance I take myself. Is like, do you have people who are very much like they call them Bitcoin maximalists, and you even have that kind of vibe starting to happen in the Ethereum community. Although I would say it seems like it's less so than in the Bitcoin community. I personally am focused on blockchain as a whole, like you said. How
Absolutely, yeah.
there's a nice phrase they like to use at Real Vision Finance, which is blockchain is eating the world.
Yeah.
So just like you said, it's going to it's going to shift from being just maybe that top layer or one of the layers in the lasagna to every sheet of pasta in that lasagna. All the meat, everything is just going to be blockchain based, and I honestly cannot wait because I see how blockchain is literally opening up new worlds to us right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
I'd like for maybe one of those one of these episodes we talk about not just blockchain, but there's other solutions. And to me, that really does take it to another level, because a lot of people, even in the blockchain or the crypto space, don't even know that there are other solutions besides blockchain that are even starting to become mainstream and are so interesting. And I mean, it just goes to show you that the space for this type of solution of providing a decentralized solution for some of real world problems that we're dealing with right now can be solved through different means.
You heard it here first, folks. We're going to have some very rare information shared on this podcast in future episodes, so make sure you subscribe and you stay tuned. Is there anything you think that you may have missed that you want to mention before we kind of close out?
I think I went through a lot.
So definitely, let me see. Let me just check my notes real quick to see if there's anything else. Oh, one thing I definitely just want to make a point of before we close out is that, just going back to the very beginning of the conversation, which is the network effects. These networks that we build in, the communities that we build in the blockchain space, and that are going to spill out into everything that we do. This whole decentralized nature of this Web3 and how decentralization has been disrupting traditional business models over time. Decentralized models are, again, very dependent on that network effect. So what I would say to anybody right now is, if you want to get involved in cryptocurrency or blockchain space, or just learn about it or whatever, and maybe you say, okay, you're not at the point yet where you're ready to just go and start playing with it with your own money yet, go ahead and join a community. There's tons of communities out there that are willing to help you learn, willing to give you resources. Blockchain stlucia is one. We have a Discord group. You can check that in the show notes or in the description. Join us on Discord. We share resources and information all the time. But if you say, okay, maybe blockchain stlucia is too new to solution, the logo is too blue, whatever it is, and you want to go somewhere else, there's tons of communities out there. Be mindful though, because there are communities that will try to exploit you as well. You have all these little scam groups and Telegram feeds being formed. Even Discord, people will jump in your inbox and be like, hey, we're a group of pump and dump and blah, 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 blah. Just take everything with a grain of salt and do your research before you give anybody any money.
Absolutely, yeah.
Add blockchain stlucia right now in the Discord. Nobody's going to ask you for money. Nobody's going to make you pay for anything. All we do right on our Discord group right now is give out free information. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and join. This has been our first podcast episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you made it this far, thank you so much, because this is a long one. And this one is really the core, just the foundations. If anybody's new to this whole blockchain space, we gave you a lot of the history. We gave you a lot to build upon. We'll put some resources in the show notes and in the description, so you can go do some more reading for yourself and check it out. Jamil, thank you for all the information you gave to us. Brother. I always love when I sit down and talk to you about these subjects, because I always end up learning a lot myself. So I know our audience learned a lot as well, and I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Yeah, for sure.
We on the blockchain now. We minted on the blockchain now. You clowns still in the clouds. You clowns is still in the clouds. We on the blockchain now. We on the blockchain now. Hey, you clowns still in the clouds. Minted, just like an NFT.